Which brings me to the rather clumsy segue to the issue of teachers and coming up with a plan that sort of assimilates and becomes part of the overall. And the overall here, John, would be some labor peace between provincial governments and the teachers' unions. It would be nice, but it doesn't seem to be on the menu. And then you have your Premier, Christy Clark, who has significant numbers of difficulties herself with an election looming. By the way, I invited the Premier to be on the show, and they said they'd get back to me, and they never did. Your Premier had a plan for 10 years, as you write, of labor peace with BC's disgruntled, I'm quoting you, unionized teachers makes for an interesting discussion paper, at least if you're an academic. However, I think Clark is dreaming if she thinks her ambitious reform proposal will end the debilitating dysfunction as opposed to simply winning her a handful of election brownie points. A, you're a great writer, and B, you hit that nail so squarely on the head, it just took one shot. How pointless was this whole exercise?
I'm not sure. I think it's part of the employment requirement of the education minister and the teachers that they engaged in sort of full frontal assault every so often. It sort of blows off steam and keeps them all happy. I mean, this dysfunction has been going on like for years and years and years. The last 40 years, in fact, we got this guy, Thomas Fleming, the educational historian from Victoria, saying that, save for brief episodes of short-lived tranquility, governments of all political stripes have found themselves in a state of almost perpetual conflict with the BC Teachers Federation for 40 years. Even the issues don't markedly change. Salaries, conditions of work, compulsory membership in the teachers' union, class size and competition, and the right to strike continue to remain hot-button issues. It seems we just shuffle around the issues and go on with... it's the same in Ontario. It's the same in Britain. It seems to be something in the water that these teachers drink at school, or maybe it's something...
Yeah, it's part of the culture. It's part of the culture. It's expected. If you were to go too long without labor strife, there'd be something terribly wrong. These people are like the National Hockey League and the National Hockey League Players Association. You have to have lockouts and strikes and labor unrest.
Right. It is in the culture. You can never really be pleasant about the opposition, except very rarely. And progress is measured very slowly. For example, here we're now talking about a framework for negotiating for next year's agreement. We're talking about the framework, not the actual agreement. So we're getting all the rhetoric is to do with the framework. And to be honest, it seems to stem, I don't know what the cause of it seems to stem from the 60s when, we were all good little radicals, right? And it just hasn't changed. And a lot of people have jobs based on this. I mean, the BCTF is a large union. So if it's like nonprofits everywhere. If you're not stirring something up, you're not winning winning money, right? You're not getting paid.
Right. Well, when it came to this 10-year plan, one of the difficulties, one of the problems that you identified was that there wasn't enough parental involvement, and that probably is pretty much true of most of the solutions that are proposed to government teachers unions conflicts. Parents aren't generally invited to get engaged.
No, they're actively discouraged from getting engaged. It's an insider. It's an insider situation. It's everybody. There's huge money. I mean, in BC, probably not as big as in Ontario. We're talking $5 billion a year here of money for everybody. The ministry bureaucrats, the BC Teachers Federation members, and the BC School Trustees Association have some money. So So they don't want sort of parents gumming up the works here. They always say they're doing it for the kids. Everybody's always doing everything for the kids. But in fact, it's unfortunately a business, really. It's a monopoly business.
Yeah, it is. And the objective is to get them in grade 1 and get them out at the other end without any delays whatsoever, because that would mess up the business plan. So we have a program called social promotion. Doesn't matter if you actually grasp the concept of what was being taught in a particular year. On you go and out you go. If you're dysfunctional, if you're illiterate, if you're functionally illiterate, it doesn't really matter. And then the teachers and the unions fight each other, and the parent stays out of the equation, because if the parent got engaged, the parent's objective would be the child, truly be the child.
And the fact is that the unions across the world are on the defensive. I mean, governments don't have the money to pay them the big sums they have and all the days off and everything. They don't have that money anymore. And also, education is changing. You can get just as good an education online in many of these subjects.
That's true.
Like maths and everything and so on. You can get a better education, I think, online. And so why do you need the whole classroom? Well, you may say it's babysitting then. Well, why are we paying so much for babysitting? And so, you know what I mean? Also, I think the demographics are working against this. But in that the fight is toughest when the stakes are kind of are this way. I think. Do I see any? You sort of asked me if I see any solution to it.
Yes.
No, I just think it goes on and on and on. To be honest, I mean, they've now agreed this very Saturday, on a framework agreement, not Christy Clark's framework agreement, but another framework agreement. So they will get to discussing things early. And there is an NDP government, a left-wing government, coming in likely in May. So as far as the teachers concerned, that's a good thing, and the NDP government are often, they likely to open the wallets more than the current one. But either government is going to have a problem if you pay $45,000 teachers, what they want to get paid, which is parity with Ontario and Alberta, or at least close to it. That's what they really want, and so it's going to be another tough fight, I think.
Yeah, and you're right in your column. It's not realistic to think that tying teacher salaries to the average of other public sector employees will end the belly aching, especially since many BC teachers seem to believe they're entitled to wage hikes well above those of the average worker. You could probably substitute any other province for BC in that very sentence, and you still be hitting the nail on the head.
And the irony of this all is all this fussing and fighting over the last 10 or 20 years has produced wage increases, I think, of less than the average government workers in BC. So it hasn't proved effective. And I think, a lot of the other unions like QP and so on are much more effective negotiators. They go in, they get it solved. They seem to, be able to do it without a lot of public fuss. And I think the teachers' union is a particularly so ideologically bound. It just can't sort things out. And hopefully, though, this is sort of a wake-up call. We can only hope, because to be honest, the education system should be about education,
yes,
not about teachers' wages.
Yes, and I really would like to see parents become more directly involved, whether or not they're invited to become involved, John. Just get into the game and make it part of your equation, because at the end of the day, terrible cliche, but at the end of the day, it's your child.
The thing is, though, the parents have their children are sort of held up to hostage. I mean, if you are seen as an activist for change, right, rather than the status quo, you wonder whether your child is going to get a good treatment. I mean, the teachers, individual teachers, seem highly political, judging by the mail I get. They don't seem to have a neutral stance on this at all. And so, parents who kind of don't go along with the program, may get, it may affect their children. I think that's one of the problems. Whereas in a private school, I'm not saying private schools are necessarily great. They have their problems. But in a private school, the parents command a lot of sway because, hey, you don't provide service, we're gone, right? Do you know what I mean? And
exactly,
they're paying
yes.
extra
Yeah.
for it. They're paying
Yeah.
extra. So, and it's like all monopolies, though. Eventually, the people working for the monopoly get the sense of entitlement that the teachers often seem to think that it's we that should be serving them rather that they should be serving us. And that's an essential difference. I think teachers are civil servant, public servants who should be serving the public who pays the bills. But I think that a lot of teachers seem to think that it's we that should be serving them. And I'm being harsh here, but I
think you're absolutely correct. I agree with you. And in the meantime, you have a desperate premier who, as you say, is firing Hail Mary passes, hoping for the best.
Right, and I think that part of the reason for this breakdown is the teaching system itself. I mean, if you have gone through 10 years of brainwashing at elementary and public high school, then you've gone to university to these faculties of education or other degrees, and then you've gone to kind of like a teaching college or whatever. Then you come out the other end kind of believing the same, bathwater.
You're programmed.
The bathwater. You have no idea what it's like to make a buck running a small business or very limited. You have very little idea what other people are doing. Regular people. I mean, nowadays a lot of people are not getting any raises at all.
Yeah.
And here we are, these public sector teachers particularly, demanding more and more. And the government's fighting back against them. And it is, as you said, a culture that I think has to change.
I agree. Jon, I always enjoy the columns, and thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks, Roy.
All the best. Jon Ferry from The Province in the newspaper in Vancouver.